Good evening, all. Today again we have one of our ever ready and ever prepared for research and presenting with her research activities, Ms. Rina Bangeri. So, for all of us who have joined in this particular call, at least needs no information because everybody is very well matured in FDPP atmosphere. So, rather than adding something more which we all know, I'll request Ms. Bangeri to start her session. Welcome, ma'am.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Dr. Imai. Good evening, all. I will get started. You can see my screen, right? Okay. So basically, the discussion topic today is EDPP adequacy decision on UK, and this is a very prevalent topic which Navi sir had selected about a month back, and I opted to take it up because this was an interesting topic at that time. Now also what I have done is I have put together the information in this deck looking at various sites which is EDPB, ICO and IAP and some other links which I have accessed. So basically we are talking about how EDPP has given the adequacy decision to UK. Okay. Now the background is like this. We had EU GDPR as a regulation at from 2018, which was implemented, right? And in the first of on 1st of January 2021, UK decided to exit from the EU countries list, right? And hence in the UK, what is prevalent currently from a compliance perspective was the Data Protection Act from 2018. So all the organizations or businesses who are operating within UK need to comply with Data Protection Act 2018. What it means that the Brexit has happened is that UK has become a third country, which is outside of the European Union, the EEA, right? So that is the background. Now, if you look at currently, UK has its own version of GDPR, and which is in line with the Data Protection Act of 2018. What essentially they did was they looked at the EU GDPR and kind of emulated the whole regulation to their alignment. Basically, it is a copy of the EU GDPR, I would say, in that sense. Now, uh, what was happening until until December 2020, until the EU GDPR was active within the UK. So basically, until 31st December 2020, all EU data protection laws were applicable together with all the current applicable e-privacy directive of UK. Okay, that was the situation. Now, in addition, this UK Data Protection Act 2018 was also applicable. That means the UK DPA was supplemented with the GDPR, and a lot of derogations were applicable within the GDPR, which were implemented within the UK. And they were completely within the EU list of countries, right? UK was part of the EU list of countries. And hence GDPR was applicable at that point in time. Now, this collection of data protection laws was also interpreted as in accordance with the case law from the Court of Justice and the UK courts. And in light of the regulatory guidance, the EDPB board was also, the regulation was implemented from the EDPB perspective in the UK. And this was governed by the ICO, which is the Information Commissioner's Office in the UK, right? Now coming to adequacy. So basically what happens is once UK was brought out of the EU, the EEA as such, the GDPR as a version was established within UK and it was implemented. What it means since UK became a third country, from a EEA perspective, the data transfer which happened from EEA countries to UK was treated as a third country data transfer. Now, in that situation, the adequacy decision needs to be understood, right? What is adequacy decision? An adequacy decision is taken by the European Commission, establishing that a third country, in this case UK, provides a comparable level of protection of personal data to that in the European Union through its domestic law or its international commitments. Okay, that is what is the meaning of adequacy decision in the context of what we are discussing today. And it also means that an adequacy decision is one of the tools provided under GDPR to transfer personal data from EU to a third country. This is one of the measures or a way to identify what is required within the country when data transfer happens from EU to a third country. Okay, and what it requires, what is the criteria, right? So it requires an assessment of the third country's data protection framework from two aspects. One is what are the protection guarantees for personal data that that country provides, and the second is on the oversight by the governance mechanism and the relevant redressal mechanisms in case of any data subject request or litigation. Yeah. So that is what it means. Now, what I have done is I have referred to the EDPB working party paper and I've called out the criteria for adequacy. So there are three criteria. One is the content principles. So basically, it lists down all the GDPR, definitions in the concepts. So basically, who is a data subject, what is a data processor, who is a data controller, those definitions, and the principles of data privacy. Those concepts are included in the point A. Okay. Then the grounds for lawful processing, right? So basically, data has to be processed in a lawful, fair, and legitimate manner. What is the legitimate basis of identifying personal data processing? Those aspects are covered in the point B, which is grounds for lawful and fair processing of based on legitimate purposes. The third is purpose limitation principle, which means that data has to be processed based on a specific purpose, and it should be, based on the purpose limitation principle. That is what is the point C. Now, it also talks about the data quality and the proportionality principle, which means that data has to be accurately maintained and it has to be maintained as up to date, right? It has to be relevant to the need or the purposes for which it has been collected. And that is what is the proportionality principle. Coming to data retention principle, that means we are all aware of this. Data should be kept for no longer than it is necessary for the purpose for which it is processed, right? Then security and confidentiality principle, where we need to ensure that the security of the data is maintained and adequate protection measures are implemented for the data which is collected and processed. And then it should be also prevented from accidental or destruction of damage and so on, right? Then it is transparency principle. That means there has to be a privacy notice or a consent which needs to be available to the data subject, right? Transparency has to be maintained. Then right of access, rectification, erasure, and objection, which we are aware of. That means the data subject should have an object. All the data subject rights have to be available or addressed, right? This is criteria 1. Coming to criteria 2, which is point B here, restrictions on onward transfers means that examples of additional content principles to be applied to specific type of processing, including special categories of data. So basically, we need to make sure that it is saying that specific safeguards should exist for specific special categories of data, right? And then if you are having any activity or processing related to direct marketing, wherever data is processed for the purpose of direct marketing, the data subject should be able to object without any charge from having the data processed. Yeah, that is regarding marketing. And automated decision making and profiling. So basically, decisions made based on automated processing should have any, the impacts on the data subject should be addressed. So there has to be a mechanism of communicating when there is an automated decision making aspect of data collected from the data subject, right? Then point C is about procedural and enforcement mechanism, which is more of a governance aspect here. So basically identifying, one is that competent independent supervisory authority should be there. In the case of UK, if you look at, you have ICO, which is the governing body, and that is a supervisory authority who is managing the uh, compliance to the UK GDPR or the Data Protection Act, right? The point B here is about data protection system must ensure a good level of compliance. So basically, what measures as a country which has been provided, so data protection of person, the data is protected of the data subjects, and there is a measurement of the compliance to such UK GDPR and the Data Protection Act. Then basically identifying accountability, right? So if you look at, it says the third country data protection framework should oblige data controllers and or those processing personal data on their behalf to comply with it and to be able to demonstrate such compliance to the competent authority, right? That is accountability. Coming to data protection system must provide support and help to individuals data subjects. So basically there should be a process of um, identifying how the data subjects can exercise their rights and who will be the authority or in case of objection to data processing or any issue which the data subject wants to escalate, what is the redressal mechanism. Okay. Then the last point here is about processing should be based on clear, precise and accessible rules, which is the legal basis. And this is again brought out from the King Party 29 paper. The necessity and proportionality with regards to legitimate objectives pursued need to be demonstrated, right? The processing has to be subject to independent oversight, right? And the effective remedies need to be available to the individual. So basically, there are two aspects, as I said. One is that the GDPR principles in terms of legitimate interest basis or whatever is the lawful basis of processing, those aspects from a conceptual perspective have to be available at the country level in their law, in their data protection framework. And the second is the governance of the country to such processing of data by organizations within that country and with a proper redressal mechanism. That is the essence of the criteria for adequacy. Okay. Now, how they approached, how this was approached. Okay. So there are two ETPP opinions in the EC draft, right? And this opinion 14/2021, 14/2021 is based on the GDPR and assesses both GDPR aspects, the data protection aspects, and the government's access to personal data transferred from the EEA. Okay, so this is the first opinion, and also covers the purposes for law enforcement and national security included in the draft adequacy decision. So this is the first opinion. The second opinion is that 15/2021, which is based on the law enforcement directive and analyzes the draft adequacy decision in the light of recommendations from January 2021 on the adequacy referential under the law enforcement directive, and it as well as the relevant case law reflected in the recommendations. So this is from the February 2020 of the paper. Also, it includes the surveillance measures, right? So if you look at this LED, which is the law enforcement directive adequacy decision, says that the UK provides adequate protection for personal data transferred from EU authorities responsible for the prevention, investigation, detection, or prosecution of criminal offenses or the execution of criminal penalties. So basically, these are the two opinions from the EDPB, which has led to the adequacy decision on UK. Okay. So that means now we have a approval from the EU on the adequacy decision for UK, and that most of the EEA processors will be able to send their personal data back to UK controllers without any restriction, because if the UK has been declared as an adequate country within the third countries which we talked about. Yeah, and it also means that data transferred from EEA to UK for the purposes of UK immigration is not included. So that is one exception which they have currently in the GDPR adequacy decision. Okay, and neither is the data that would fall within the scope of immigration exemptions in the DPA 2018. And um, the governance around this is that ICO remains the independent supervisory body regarding the UK's data protection legislation, and ICO will not be the regulator for any European specific activities caught by EU GDPR, but it will work closely with European supervisory authority. So basically, they are holding hands between UK and the European Union. The governance is together. Okay. So this is one. Now, what's needed now? So basically, I'm talking about what will be required to be done once you have the adequacy decision. So basically, the EU adequacy decision applies to the whole of UK, including Northern Ireland. Okay, this was included in the adequacy decision when they did an assessment. So, which also means that if your UK business or organization receives personal data from the EU or EEA, it can continue to flow as before, and you do not need to take further action, right? Unless you are falling in scope for the exception, which is the immigration exemption, right? And if you are a UK business or organization with an office branch or other established presence in the EEA, or if you have customers in the EEA, you need to comply with both UK and EU regulations, data protection regulations. And you may also need to have a designated representative in the EEA, right? Now, I've just called out some activities which need to be done in the new scenario of UK having the adequacy research. So basically, you'll have to map your data flows, right? If there is any data which is flowing from EU to UK, you need to map it and assess it for ensuring compliance in terms of both UK as well as EU GDPR, right? And the second one is update your records of processing. Again, in the context of how the data is flowing, you need to do your DPIA. You record your activity in terms of how the data is being collected, processed, and stored and deleted, right? In that records of processing, you need to make sure that you are calling out the data source, whether it is from EU or UK, right? And update the records of processing. That's the second point. Then also assess, as we said, whether the EU supervisory authority is required in EU representative for your business is required to approach the lead supervisory authority in EU or UK. So that you have to make an assessment based on how the business is, right? Then appoint a UK and or EU representative, right? So the earlier point is about who will be your lead supervisory authority. In the second point, we are talking about whether from your organization you need to identify somebody who will be your organization's representative, like a DPO, to represent those countries. Okay. Then you also need to revisit your privacy notices, because you need to call out how data is being collected, how data is flowing, and what kind of third-party interactions you will have if any vendors are in any of these countries, right? Then you'll have to also amend your existing contracts and templates, meaning if you look at the current process, assessment, LIA is revisiting it for up. Then
Reena, your connectivity appears to be bad.
Yes, sir.
Your connectivity was not very good. Now screen share is gone.
sorry. Shall I share again?
Yeah.
There was a connection issue. Yeah. So this I was on this slide. You heard me, right? The last 2 points.
Ma'am, if possible, turn off your video. I think that's eating the bandwidth.
Okay. Yeah. You're able to see the screen, right?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the last 2 points I was talking about, we need to revisit the DPIA and the LIA. LIA is the legitimate interest assessment, which there is a guidance provided in the ICO site as well. Okay. And the last point here is about ensuring that appropriate safeguards are in place for any cross-border data flows. Okay. So this is the last slide. The conclusion is that businesses can continue to transfer personal data from EU to UK as before Brexit, and that it also has EU's review of the UK data protection regime in line with the UK's conclusion that EU data protection is adequate for personal data transfers. So EU has their own process of reviewing the UK's data protection compliance measures which they have put in place from a law perspective. And then UK-based businesses should therefore continue to comply with the UK data protection regime and follow the ICO guidance for any data transfers. Okay. Now, there are these standard contractual clauses as well. Okay, where this has just I think come out in July or August, one of the months, right? And they have put in 4 modules. So erstwhile, if you look at, there was just one document which was covering all of the aspects of how data transfer between controller and processor and the obligations were listed, and that used to be there. That used to be followed by all organizations to include them in the contracts which they have when there is a controller to processor data exchange, right? But in the new scenario or in the new documents which they have rolled out, there are 4 modules they have introduced. One covering the transfer of data from controller to controller. Second is the data transfer from controller to processor. Third one is about processor to processor. And the fourth one is about the data transfer from processor to controller. What they have also asked, I think there was a link which was floated by ICO soliciting feedback on the SECs, right? And also it is asking feedback on how the risk assessment should be done in their data transfer assessment framework which they have rolled out. So there is a link in the ICO website as well. Okay. I have also looked at the IAP's website where they have introduced a EU SEC transfer impact assessment Excel workbook, okay, which has multiple sheets and multiple scenarios which they have used to depict the risk assessment of data transfer. And it's a elaborate workbook which I have explored and seen. Looks to be good. It depends on how organizations look at it and adopt it. Right? They have also rolled out a cloud computing risk assessment of lawful basis by foreign authorities. So basically, this is coming from a cloud computing angle where the data is stored by a cloud computing service provider, right? So this is where we are. I have covered these topics, this topic in multiple slides. I think I'm open for taking feedback and discussion. Any questions anyone has put on the chat?
Prakash, you have got any comments?
So yeah, I mean, I did a little bit of study and then put this document together. But one of the things which I have got to delve upon is the those 4 documents which they have rolled out from EU SECs. The how they are actually practically implementable, because it has made the whole process of vendor contracts little more cumbersome in my high level view. But we are yet to see how this will have to be rolled out and adopted by organizations.
Repo? Any thoughts?
We have very less attendance today.
Yeah.
I have a thought on cloud. Means when it comes to cloud, how these adequacies will be means achieved, or who will certify? Is it means still confusing to me, because presently RBI has also done this particular blunder. They are asking for SAR certification, that is system audit report, and there they are asking from the banks whose data is on cloud to certify that that particular entire data is localized in India. So is it really feasible or possible to certify these sort of things when it data migrates to cloud?
See, my view, I don't know, I'm not fully understood about this, how this will have to be approached by organizations and countries. My view is that wherever the cloud service provider's data center is, if it is in a certain country, that cloud service provider have to be complying to the local applicable data protection laws of that country. And that is the approach. Even if you look at the SECs which are being rolled out from that EU, there are 4 of them. I think those SECs will try to impose upon the compliance to the respective laws. That is my high level reading, but I'll have to really investigate and further understand this.
Technically, we can keep data in the cloud in whichever country we want. So technically, it's not a problem. So when we create a resource in cloud, we can say in this data center, we can keep the data. So, but it might be economically not feasible sometimes because of the resources involved in designing the data center, say for AWS or Azure. It will become cheaper if we send data to US rather than India. But technologically, it's not a problem. It means it's like what people say, like in the cloud, I don't know where data is. It's not true. We can clearly keep data where we want actually.
So
Just
means
to
who
add
will
to what Mr. Anant is saying, I had an experience with one company. I was assisting for their EU GDPR compliance, where they were using some application which had their data center in numerous locations. So we actually wrote to that service provider asking them, where is our data located? So which was responded to, and they told us where exactly the data for our app, the data which we are uploading on the application will be located. So maybe that kind of thing can be done, and banks can get that uh, email confirmation or a confirmation from the service provider as to where they are storing the bank's data, on which server, which in which geography.
It also depends on what are the security measures implemented by the cloud service provider. and to the satisfaction of the service, the processor basically, right? And it can be mutually agreed between the controller and processor to, um, to assess the technical and security measures which are provided by the cloud service provider, right? In the compliance to the respective country where the cloud, the data is stored on the cloud, as Ruchika is saying.
But I assume when they store data in cloud, there must be some mirroring going on. For say, like in banks, DR sites are there.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there must be data located at two different locations.
Yes.
So how is it possible that they will disclose that particular location? Yes, one location they will disclose that it is at this particular place located in this country. But
But,
certainly there has to be mirroring.
yes, sir. Let me tell you what happens.
Yeah.
Means in cloud, say if you take Azure, because I worked with Azure. So if you take Azure, when you actually create some resource, so infrastructure as a service, where we get more control and banks will go for it. So when you actually, there are four or five different types of redundancy. So one is it gets copied onto the same rack in data center. So in the same rack, like it will be copied in different machines, and it will be copied in a different data center. Three copies of that will be actually copied. So if one machine fails, there will be two other machines which has the data. And also there will be like availability zone. So if you pay, by default it will not be copied. By default only local copy will happen, and then availability zone copy will happen in the same data center. And if you want, it's not by default, no cloud will give you redundancy outside the region. If you want your, if banks want, say in Azure, it has North India center region, and I think Central India region. So the North India region, if you actually create your presence, it will not be automatically copied. You have to pay and tell the cloud provider that my data should also be copied to Central India. So you have the control. So it's not that the cloud provider will simply copy your data to other region. No, because it's a cost involved, and you have to pay even for the transfer of the data, the network cost, and where it goes. So everything is under control. So you can clearly say where your data has to go. If you want your data to be in India, the cloud provider ensure the data will be in India. And there are a lot of auditing tools and monitoring tools which they give. You can see where exactly your data is in actually. So it's technically, it's not a problem. So the
Including the
cost
backup,
wise, it
you're
might be
saying,
a problem.
right, Anand?
Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
Including the backup where it is being taken.
Yes, you have to tell where it has to be backed up. So they, like in the data center, they will clearly back up. So if it is data center is in Navi Mumbai, so if in the data center, if it is copied, it's not a problem for me, because they will not tell you exactly in which rack it is copied, because the same rules applies. But if they have to send it to, say, for example, Singapore, then if you want, only the customer has to say that my data has to be in Singapore as well as in North India region. Then only they will do it, because it's a cost for them. It's all money for them actually. Because I have done it, so technologically it's possible.
Anil, you have got anything to say?
Nothing really much, but what Anant said, Anant had actually given a complete insight of how these things are managed. And in my experience, all these can be controlled by the cloud's client or the cloud customer, what we call it, by way of contract. So these all things are clearly laid out in the contract, where my source data is, where my backup is going to be. And as Anant said, the cost it attached to it. So there are challenges. The only concern happens when you have got a multinational company which has a kind of centralized operations and it is spread across so many countries. So whether there is a local data replication required, not required, and how it is happening. Again, these all things are controlled by a contract. That is what my experience is also with some of my clients.
Okay. Rajesh?
Sir, we always have a data challenge when we are having on the CSP, but as we came to know that we can customize and make it in our contract clearly where our data are stored. I think those challenges can be minimized.
Okay, that is basically we are trying to secure by contract,
Yes.
but when you do an audit or something, there is very little scope of checking something beyond the assurances which are provided by the service provider, I suppose.
No,
Is it
in that contract also, if they will mention very clearly, this particular country, the data will be stored. At that time, we can take the documentation evidence from the CSP to their client, and that client can able to demonstrate to us, because that is a contractual requirement. So as far as our audit concern, we try to look at it about the contractual requirement, how they are managing their data privacy. Yes.
Okay.
And also the data deletion aspects in case of an audit also, typically such contracts will have an audit clause where we'll ask upon request kind of verbiage, where we say that we ask the cloud service provider to provide a certification that in the event of a data deletion request, they have deleted it from the all of the locations of that data, including the backup.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
this audit process is a little challenging in my understanding, because we are not able to really check in and out of what the service provider has done, but we are only depending on a self-declaration or a contractual clause.
No. In that, they try to show us the deletion records in the registry, so that we come to know about those particular our ID the data has been deleted, and plus they give the certification of compliance. Yes.
Yeah, correct. But as I'm still not sure whether, I think this is not a very comprehensive solution. Of course, we always say that audit is a sampling exercise, but there could always be remnant data which is sitting somewhere for whatever reason, right? That risk is always there.
No, because if you consider, there are two type of mechanism. Is that one, they try to do it regularly with the defined process during the internal audit, and second thing, most of the CSPs are certified on various 27017 and those standards. So their standard requirements are there, so they can able to demonstrate this.
Okay.
Yeah, I do agree with Rajesh. We can get the evidence by way of different internal audit records, external audit records, and the self-declaration by the cloud service provider. And these audits typically are more related to a compliance kind of audit, where we are going to ensure compliance. So to that extent, we can rely on that evidence. But as Reena, you are correct, when there is some remnant data somewhere, but then that will come out in an investigative audit. If we are doing an investigative audit, probably, as Anand said, we can use some tools to go and actually look where the data is located physically, and then we can definitely take it up.
Right. But does this aspect come in our PDPV in terms of giving some insight into such investigative audit? I don't know. I mean,
unless you are auditing or investigating a data breach kind of a scenario, you normally don't get into investigative audits.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Ramesh Kauta, in the banking segment, how are you handling it?
So for now, one of the guidelines RBI is they're not allowed to put any of the sensitive data in cloud. So that restriction is stopping it. Otherwise, general application does not carry any of them. It really not becoming a risk, at least at this point of time. So some of them are using cloud, but not for a core banking or sensitive data information. So I think that's where it's still safe.
Okay.
Ramesh sir, I had the same question. When RBI has not clearly mandated that data should be migrated to cloud, how few banks are using cloud solutions for storing their data or for some activities?
Some of them are not actually using storing data, sir. They're only using services. So that basically it's something like as someone said, infrastructure as service kind of a thing, but not for any hosting. It could be some simply like a web proxies or the web solutions where they may not want to host and they have got requirement across. They are using that only.
No, few banks are thinking of DR sites in cloud. That's what I'm gathering the information regarding, and that's why I'm worried.
Yeah.
How DR can be hosted on cloud, etc.
Equally the same risk, sir, I think. But somewhere I think government generally is pushing their Magraj, so which is basically again inside the country developed or as CDAC developed. So that's one way. But again, I think people are banks are evaluating it one by one. But wherever they see there's a confidential control, they're moving.
Yeah, Arya has got something to say, I think.
Hello.
Yeah, Arya,
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. Yeah.
Okay. I was just about to say that in banks or whatever it is, so they want any infrastructure, they can offload the infrastructure onto the data centers, okay, within India. So they are free to do that, but not on cloud. And they are using at present also they are using many banks are using these big data center control S and those kind of Airtel data centers for their banking purpose. They are using purely as an infrastructure as a service.
Okay. Yeah,
So
Ruchika.
even their DR site is also maybe on you could say data center somewhere within India, okay. But again, that's on that infrastructure as they hire some racks space in the data center and they put it there, whole system.
Right. Yeah.
But in banks, cloud is still a remote thing until something concrete comes and the whole setup of cloud is within India. And today with the technology and tools, becomes a traces can be always data traces can be tracked and traced anywhere in the world. You can say, but my biggest challenge was that, and I always can say raise this question: how to prove that there is no trace available of my data onto cloud when I'm switching from some other to switching is also a problem, migration is also a problem, it's a big exercise. But when you are switching to another cloud, how to ensure that there is no trace of my data left, okay, in a tape or in a hard disk or anywhere. So you really can't control that.
Okay.
Only SLA and contract can do that. In fact, checking their whole infrastructure may not be possible. Somebody is storing your data at the third location also. You have given first for 2 locations, but who is doing it on third also, so you really don't know.
Yeah.
Those doubts and challenges are still there.
True. Yeah.
That is where the contracts would come into the picture, and breach of contract will be a relief that you can seek. Redressal could be possible there.
That's why
Because-
it is purely governed by SLAs and contracts.
Yeah, you're right, because it's very difficult to determine whether the person is doing what they are saying or doing in addition to what they've committed.
And that's why most of the organization, okay, still large organization haven't put their sensitive data on cloud. They use emails and those kind of collaboration, those kind of applications, but not the key data on cloud actually.
Okay.
Just to add to Sir's point, is means sensitive data, again, it depends on the company policy, whether they want to actually put that in the cloud which they trust. Secondly, apart from Alibaba, for obvious reasons, we don't know, we cannot do anything. Other cloud providers, they will not try to do means unnecessary copying. It might happen, like there might be malfunctioning, or there might be some other thing which they are liable to, as ma'am rightly pointed out, and you sir also pointed out about the contract. So usually cloud is now in a very matured state. So it was not that like 5 or 6 years ago, but now they have clear cut policies. So when the same thing happens, or if you, the Pentagon thing where the discussion is happening when Trump awarded it to Azure rather than AWS. So as and there is a case which is going on, if I'm not wrong, like why the data, the cloud hosting was given to Azure. So because Azure has a separate cloud for government of US, so it's not accessible via internet. And one more thing I wanted to tell is, like, when you say cloud is not safe, uh, it's again because like internet, when we have a separate network, cloud providers have built their own internet, means their own private network. Microsoft has its own private network. So if the data will not come to the internet and then be transferred, say if I have to transfer from India to Singapore, you can ask the data, means you can ask the cloud provider to send the data through Microsoft's network, where it's controlled by Microsoft. So but you have to pay more, but that is still there. So by nature they have made it very safe. But then again, it's like Murphy's law, there might be something which might happen, but usually it's safe. And then if you have contracts in place, they will abide by the contract.
No,
So
it's. I'm not saying that they don't abide by the contracts or agreements, but again, there are always rogue employees in every
yes,
organization.
yes, but they'll keep it like they
You
have the.
can't rule that out actually.
Yes, yes. We
Okay.
can, in information security, we never can rule out that, but
Yes.
usually keep it safe. And
Yeah. That's I'm not saying, but still, cloud people have to ensure that, or most of the countries are willing that my cloud, okay, so my area of the cloud should be within my region, within my country only.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
So we have, that's why all the major cloud providers have set it, set the regions, what they call, because they call it as region in India. So they have the regions in India. And also it's the cloud is nothing but a set of data centers with a universal management interface. So it's like, which gives,
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
so our data centers, because it's just marketing stuff which Azure and AWS does, we have very good data centers in India which can provide cloud service. So if banks want, they need not go to Azure and AWS. They can, as sir pointed out, we can just co-locate or put it in a data center in a very safe place, which is earthquake or flood safe. And each data center has to go through rigorous testing. So if I have, and they have a specific rating mechanism where they will say this is earthquake proof or this is flood proof, and they will get a certificate, and they can say this is the certificate. And if banks in India want to actually transfer, they can transfer in India. And they do provide some service like the cloud, but and they do provide a web interface. So it's again, it can be done only if you want some kind of a global presence, which RBI is, as I means learned that they are not doing it. I mean, they are not allowing it. You can keep the data very well in India, so it's not a problem. We have infrastructure, we have everything, so we need not go to Azure and AWS or Google Cloud.
But the Azure and they all are trying to bring their infrastructure within India now.
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
until you force, nobody will do.
Correct, sir.
Yes.
Okay, thank
Sorry,
you.
sorry.
Yeah, Adepu?
Really, Anant has got a very good point. It says about co-location data center, and this is one of the experience that a number of these banks, they are confused in cloud or co-location. They are actually doing a co-location, but they typically they call it as a cloud hosted data center. But that is one of the confusion and terminology also they have. Yeah, Adepu, sorry, go on.
Yeah, Adepo, we can see you.
We can see you, well, we cannot hear you.
Yeah, I think your voice is not coming through.
Voice is a problem.
The microphone is not working, it appears.
Small reminder to everyone to spread tomorrow's seminars,
Yeah.
personal invitation that I had mentioned in chat.
Okay, Adepo, I think your connection, I think, is a problem. Okay. Okay. On behalf of others, I will thank Reena for today's session and opening up some new thoughts on how these data transfers will occur across the different jurisdictions and how that will be factored into the adequacy decisions. And also we should thank others for having taken up some questions and try to enlarge the discussion.